Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moment. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of The Great Ruler Season 2 Part 6 based on novel. So let's start. Dragon Soaring Art. Mu Chen looked at the ancient characters on the dragon-scaled scroll and immediately licked his lips. Although he didn't know what kind of deity-tier spiritual art the dragon soaring art was, how could something that was taken out by a sovereign be ordinary? This dragon soaring art was an incomplete page that I'd obtained back then by mere luck. Thereafter, I, somewhat, completed it. However, even though this dragon soaring art was incomplete, it was extremely out of the ordinary. The white dragon sovereign lightly smiled as he gently caressed the dragon-scaled scroll and passed it over to Mu Chen. As it was an incomplete spiritual art, I did not give it a ranking. But, back then, when I was surrounded by 3 sovereign powerhouses, I relied on this dragon soaring art to retreat unscathed. Mu Chen's heart slightly jolted as unconcealable shock flashed through his eyes. What kind of scene was it for 3 sovereign-level experts to fight together? He didn't have a clear concept of it, but that was definitely a tight spot. However, seeing as the white dragon sovereign could retreat unscathed, he could tell how powerful the dragon soaring art was. Precisely speaking, this dragon soaring art should be a movement deity tier spiritual art. Although it might not grant you powerful offensive capabilities, it is sufficient to protect your life. Mu Chen lightly nodded as his eyes were filled with joy. The current cards that he had up his sleeves were too little. Although the might of the four-god constellation scripture was unpredictable, he still had not fully comprehended and was lacking in movement spiritual arts. And at this point, it could be seen from his battle with the grey-robed elder back then. The latter's movement spiritual art was way more powerful compared to his, which forced him to a rather sorry state. But, right now, this powerful movement deity tier spiritual art, dragon soaring art, came just in time to overcome Mu Chen's weak point. When the white dragon sovereign saw Mu Chen receive the scroll, he stood up and continued, "This dragon soaring art is out of the ordinary and hard to comprehend. My intent will soon dissipate, but before I dissipate, let me lend you a hand. Look at my steps, I'll display the profound intent of the dragon soaring art for you." The white dragon sovereign unleashed a low bark and his figure appeared on the white horizon. He took a step out, his steps were bizarre, as if he was walking on the stars, which was unfathomable. The roar of a dragon resounded and his steps looked as though he was walking on the formless sound waves. Mu Chen fixed his eyes at the bizarre movements of the white dragon sovereign. At the beginning, he could barely follow up, but the white dragon sovereign's steps quickly turned fuzzy. Not knowing when, the white dragon sovereign's figure had already disappeared. The fuzzy figure looked as though it had turned into a huge dragon as it soared. As it swayed, the space looked as though it had been pierced. That speed looked as though it could travel 1,000 miles in an instant. Roar? A lingering dragon roar resounded in this space. As the white light flickered, the white dragon sovereign's figure appeared once again. His figure, right now, dulled down by a lot as he lowered his head, looking towards Mu Chen. The latter's black pupils were concentrated with light flashing across as the appearance of a dragon soaring image flashed across his eyes. Mu Chen's eyes flickered with the dragon soaring image for a full half-hour before it dulled down. His black pupils concentrated again as he turned quick-witted. "Many thanks, Senior," Mu Chen said as he cupped his hands, looking at the figure before him as that figure turned hazy, as if the white dragon sovereign was about to disappear. This deity-tier spiritual art was extremely challenging to learn. If he didn't have the demonstration by the white dragon sovereign earlier, no matter how powerful his talent was, it would still cost him quite some time. But earlier, the white dragon sovereign gave him a lead, causing the difficulty of learning it to be lowered. It was hard to find something that fit my liking. Henceforth, giving it to you could resolve a wish of mine. The white dragon sovereign lightly smiled. He was originally just a remnant intent that was left behind that was borrowing the remaining spiritual energy within the white dragon spiritual pearl. He wasn't an actual existence. This junior will never forget this senior's huge grace. If there's anything that you required this junior to do, please let me know, Mu Chen said gravely. He had been someone that was distinct on gratitude and grudges. Today, he received the help of the white dragon sovereign, so, naturally, He had to remember this gratitude. Hearing Mu Chen's words, the White Dragon Sovereign was slightly startled. Thereafter, his gaze turned blank and muttered, "If there's any wish of mine, it would be to return to my homeland." His blank gaze suddenly gathered a little together. After all, he stared at Mu Chen with unusual seriousness, or even solemn. He remained silent for a long while and slowly spoke out, "You're really willing to help me? As long as it's something I can accomplish, I will definitely not reject it," he said without much hesitation. "Ha ha ha, good," the White Dragon Sovereign laughed as his clear and bright eyes stared at Mu Chen. "I never thought that even after I've fallen, I could meet a youth like you. Your name is Mu Chen, right?" "Yes." "Good, Mu Chen. I do have a wish, and it is also an opportunity for you. But whether you could grasp it would depend on your accomplishment." The White Dragon Sovereign laughed as he made a gesture with his hand. White dragon light runes formed within his palm and shot into Mu Chen's body as fast as lightning. Although Mu Chen was slightly startled, he did not panic and only looked at the White Dragon Sovereign in doubt. "My wish is that one fine day, I hope that you're able to head towards the lower plane where I came from and expel all those foreign blood fiend tribesmen that have occupied my homeland." The White Dragon Sovereign closely stared at Mu Chen. "If you're able to accomplish that, then I would definitely grant you a huge opportunity. Believe me, this opportunity will let you become a true supreme expert." Mu Chen was dumbstruck. The White Dragon Sovereign was asking him to expel those blood fiend tribesmen. But they are the terrifying fiend tribesmen that could easily slaughter millions and millions of life forms. Even if he managed to become a sovereign, it should still be impossible for him to accomplish that, right? Unless he became an expert like the Flame Emperor and the Martial Ancestor, who became a huge authorities of their own territory, how could he attack a lower plane? "What? No confidence," the White Dragon Sovereign said as he stared at Mu Chen. Mu Chen's expression was grave as he went silent for a brief moment, before nodding his head. "I'm grateful for Senior's grace and I ought to repay you. Although it is impossible for the current me, I guarantee that one fine day, when I possess that kind of power, I will definitely head for Senior's lower plane and banish those fiend tribesmen." "Good." The White Dragon Sovereign's calm eyes ripples with great emotion. He didn't know if his actions today would let a seed grow into a towering tree. But no matter what, it was still a trace of hope. "The White Dragon light runes that I've left in your toady will let you know the location of the lower plane when your strength reaches a certain level. After you've accomplished your promise, it will also let you know what the huge opportunity is." The White Dragon Sovereign's gaze gradually restored their calm as he looked at Mu Chen and lightly spoke. "However, if you are unable to accomplish it, you don't have to force yourself. I'm well aware of how frightening this mission is. I'll remember it." Mu Chen heavily nodded his head. If there was a day he possessed the strength to accomplish it, then he would definitely pay a visit to the White Dragon Sovereign's lower plane hometown. And, at that time, he would banish all those savage and destructive foreign fiend tribesmen, allowing the lower plane to radiate with life again. The White Dragon Sovereign laughed as he shut his eyes and muttered, "I really hoped that I could witness that day." His figure gradually dulled down and thoroughly disappeared. Mu Chen gave a bow towards the location where the White Dragon Sovereign's figure dissipated. Shortly after, with a thought flashing by, he exited from the White World. Up on the mountain peak, Mu Chen's tightly shut eyes opened as he looked at the White Dragon spiritual pearl that was in his hand, which had dulled a lot more in terms of its luster as he lightly spoke with solemn, "White Dragon Senior, rest assured. If I possesses that power one day, I will definitely attack the lower plane and banish those filthy things." The White Dragon spiritual pearl seemed to be able to hear what he just said as it slightly unleashed a glow. Mu Chen gently caressed the White Dragon spiritual pearl before storing it. He stood up and lightly stretched his body. The bones in his entire body rippled with a sparkling glow and the crackling of his bones sounded like firecrackers being lit. Along with the sound, Mu Chen could sense the power within his body growing little by little. What powerful energy! Mu Chen tightly clenched his fist as he sensed the surge of power within his body. He couldn't help smiling. The current him was way more powerful compared to the him that was half a month ago. Without using any special means, the current him could suppress a heavenly transformation stage initial phase expert or even middle phase, which he could also contend against. If he were to use his various methods, He could even cause a huge threat towards heavenly transformation stage middle phase experts who could cause him some troubles before the enhancement of his strength. I wonder, if I were to fight with Li Xiantong right now, what would the outcome be? Mu Chen muttered to himself as fighting intent slightly gathered in his black pupils. Back then, when he fought with Li Xiantong, he had spent various means to take the 3 moves. But if they were to fight again, Mu Chen was confident that Li Xiantong wouldn't have it easy anymore. His gains in this trip to the lightning territory had far surpassed his expectations. Hey, the speed of forming divine lightning bead is way too slow in the 7th level of the lightning territory. Let's head to the next 3 levels. I want to refine a sufficient amount of divine lightning beads. The 9 Netherbirds' voice suddenly resounded within Mu Chen's heart. How much have you refined in the past few days? Mu Chen asked. When he was cultivating, the 9 Netherbird did not idle around. Only 2,000, the 9 Netherbird said with dissatisfaction. 2,000 was equivalent to 400,000 spiritual value points. This speed was already extremely fast. However, there was still quite a distance to 2,500,000 spiritual value points. Then let's head towards the last 3 levels. Mu Chen looked towards the depth of the 7th level. As his strength rose, the 7th level of the lightning territory could no longer obstruct him. Therefore, he wished to attempt to head for the last 3 levels of the lightning territory and see how hard it was to break through. Mu Chen smiled as his grand spirit rose in his heart. Shortly after, he took a step forward. His steps were profound with a dragon's roar. His figure looked as though it was moving with a soaring dragon. In a flash, he had already appeared a few thousand feet one away. Compared to back then, his speed had increased more than a fold. Although Mu Chen had yet to fully master the dragon soaring art, the initial access towards the art had already far surpassed his past speed. The dragon roar resounded as Mu Chen's figure rapidly disappeared into the horizon. 10 Chinese feet equals 3.3 meters. In the vast 7th level of the lightning territory, a deep dragon's roar resounded as the light image streaked across the horizon with astonishing speed. The light image was like a soaring dragon. As it moved, even the horizon was pierced. In a flash, it had reached the edge of the horizon with astonishing speed. Along the way, there were lines of sight that had noticed that light image. However, before they could recover, that light image had already appeared at the edge of the horizon. The speed of the light image caused them to be dumbfounded. That light image was, naturally, Mu Chen. At the same time, his heart was filled with joy as the speed of the dragon soaring art had far surpassed his expectations. Compared to his past speed, this was several times faster. In the future, with this escaping movement art, he could escape even if he couldn't overpower his opponent. With the dragon soaring art, his safety was, naturally, guaranteed. Shoo-hoo! In just over 10 minutes, that speed had allowed him to travel through the 7th level and he reached the depths of the 7th level. Over there was a screen blocking the access to the 8th level. The light image gradually dissipated and Mu Chen appeared. He directed his gaze before him with a grave look. In his sight, it wasn't a lightning light screen, but an enormous lightning river with torrential lightning water pouring down in torrents. It was like a water screen that blocked the path towards the 8th level. This is the screen that blocks the 8th level. Mu Chen looked at the endlessly falling lightning water as he muttered. He swept his line of sight around and could sense the spiritual energy ripples from his surroundings. The ripples of spiritual energy were powerful, yet they were clearly spiritual energies from the students that were bitterly cultivating. However, when Mu Chen sensed them, those people had also noticed him. However, they did not show themselves, but were watching from the dark. All of the students that could reach this location were pinnacle existences in the Northern Heavens Spiritual Academy. None of them would be easy to deal with. Mu Chen wasn't too bothered by them as he directed his sight back towards the lightning river screen. His brows slightly knitted together. The lightning energy that was contained in the lightning screen was way too fearsome. Even a heavenly transformation stage initial phase expert wouldn't have a good time if they were washed down by it. From the looks of it, it wouldn't be easy for him to forcefully make his way through. Mu Chen stared at the falling lightning river as he sunk himself into his thoughts. After a long time, His eyes suddenly narrowed together as he realized that, although the falling river water was densely packed, there were still gaps in between. If he could pass through those small gaps, there's a high chance that he'd be able to pass through the lightning river screen. This required an extreme amount of speed in order to accomplish it. If it was the previous Mu Chen, he could probably only look at it and feel helpless. However, the current him possessed the dragon soaring art, allowing him to give it a try. Mu Chen didn't show much hesitation as he moved, making abnormal steps towards the screen with a light image following him. The light image was like a soaring dragon. Shoo! His figure charged into the falling lightning river screen under many astonished gazes from the dark. Mu Chen concentrated as he stepped forth, circulating the dragon soaring art and flew out. Shii! Mu Chen's figure rushed into the lightning river. However, his body turned uncontrollably stiff. Although his speed wasn't slow, it won't be easy for him to pass through the small gap. What awaited him was the lightning river falling on his body as the violent and heavy energy forcefully made him fall back. He felt a slight sweetness in his throat. What a formidable lightning river screen! Mu Chen suppressed the fresh blood as a grave light flashed across his eyes. If he attempted to pass through the lightning river screen before he made his breakthrough, just this alone would have given him more than enough to suffer. Those hidden gazes that were watching him inwardly shook their heads. Seemed like there's another one that attempted to pass through the lightning river screen. However, from the looks of it, it seemed his efforts were all futile. There was only 2 people that had managed to get into the 8th level of the lightning territory in the whole Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy, Shen Xangsheng and Li Xiantong. Aside from those 2, the rest could only manage to get to the 7th level. Although they were constantly trying, no one managed to succeed. They were astonished by Mu Chen's speed, but even so, he still couldn't pass through the lightning river screen. Mu Chen was unaware of their thoughts. His eyes closely stared at the endlessly falling lightning river screen. Shortly after, he deeply inhaled and his gaze gradually turned calm. The spiritual energy ripples around him also turned calm. His state of mind turned exceptionally firm. All other disturbances no longer affected him. Only the endlessly falling lightning river screen was still moving. The light screen appeared in his black pupils again, as if it was an image of a soaring dragon. The bizarre movements that the white dragon sovereign had exerted appeared within Mu Chen's eyes again and again. Mu Chen stood before the lightning river screen for a full half hour. In this half hour, his body did not move. And seeing his behavior, the gazes that were hidden in the dark also felt baffled. That fellow is not going to give up yet? And in their doubts, both of Mu Chen's eyes gradually closed. Shortly after, his steps rose and the light image around him turned into a soaring dragon image as a low roar resounded out. Roar? The instant that dragon's roar resounded, Mu Chen felt as though he was stepping on the sound waves. His figure had turned into an afterimage and he burst out. The figure abruptly flashed through the lightning river screen. However, this time, Mu Chen wasn't sent flying back as the figure that was turning illusory bit by bit was actually an afterimage. He went in. Within a 100-mile radius, some people that were on the lightning luring stages abruptly stood up with astonished gazes. All of the attention was gathered on the lightning water screen as the afterimages constantly dissipated. However, there wasn't the sight of anyone being repelled from it. Vaguely, it was as though they saw the light image, along with Dragon Roar, pass through the lightning river. He actually managed to pass through it. Just who is he? Someone deeply uttered in shock. After so long, there was finally a third person that managed to enter the 8th level of the lightning territory. And when Mu Chen passed through the lightning river, he had also attracted a commotion outside of the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy's lightning territory. On the huge platform, the lightning territory ranking suddenly flickered with a dazzling light. Countless students were attracted by it and their astonished gazes were directed on it. It had been a long time since such an abnormal scene had appeared on the lightning territory ranking. Normally speaking, only when there were major changes in the lightning territory would such an abnormal scene appear. Everyone directed their gazes over and they realized a light had moved on it. A silvery light had soared up with astonishing speed, instantly surpassing Su Xian, He Yao and the rest before stopping at the 3rd position. Mu Chen, Lightning Territory 8th level. Astonishment was like a tidal wave as it swept out, instantly causing a huge commotion. Countless people were dumbfounded. It was actually Mu Chen, 1 foot. That newcomer, Mu Chen? How is he so powerful? Not even He Yao and the rest could get to the 8th level of the Lightning Territory. How did he manage to do it? I have no idea, but there wouldn't be any lies in the Lightning Territory ranking. That Mu Chen must have managed to get to the 8th level. This is too fearsome. How did he manage to accomplish that? Outside the Lightning Territory, it was a huge commotion as everyone exchanged looks. They could see the disbelief from each other's eyes. Although, right now, Mu Chen could be considered a famed figure in the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy, no matter what, it didn't represent anything. His fight with Li Xiantong was just the pact of 3 moves. And previously, in the Demon's Gate headquarters, he had managed to lay out the spiritual arrays beforehand. Furthermore, He Yao had clearly held his hands back and didn't want to display his true strength just because of Mu Chen. Therefore, although there were some incidents that could increase Mu Chen's fame, it didn't allow him to truly surpass He Yao and the rest. But, right now, the commotion on the Lightning Territory ranking had allowed them to finally have a direct awareness. Perhaps this ranking wasn't as direct as the heavenly ranking, but it wasn't a light ranking. From here, everyone could see the true strength that those students had concealed. And Mu Chen was able to get into the 8th level of the Lightning Territory. Doesn't that mean that he had already surpassed He Yao and the rest, and was catching up to Li Xiantong? Isn't this freshman too formidable? The changes on the Lightning Territory ranking soon spread out and attracted many disbelievers. Because the headquarters of the Demon's Gate was still under construction, the buildings had become much more simple. He Yao was sitting on the first seat as he listened to his subordinate reporting to him without any expression. Mu Chen entered the 8th level of the Lightning Territory? How is that possible? Chen Hu issued a cry of surprise from the side with a face of disbelief. He Yao's expression didn't show much fluctuation, but his pupils condensed a little. He held onto a teacup for a long time, before putting it down and said with indifference, although it isn't easy to enter the 8th level of the Lightning Territory, if he used some methods, it is still possible to sneak in. There isn't much to be surprised about. That's right. Chen Hu nodded, it's just that boss is unwilling, otherwise, it wouldn't be that difficult to enter the 8th level. He Yao lightly smiled as his gaze gradually turned cold. Rest assured. Just let him be complacent right now. During the hunting war, no matter how high he soars, I will still suppress him. On a mountain peak in the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy, Li Xiantong looked at the paper with the news of the Lightning Territory in his hands as his eyes gradually narrowed. Shortly after, he flickered his fingers, turning that paper into ashes. It seemed that Mu Chen had become much more powerful. However, if he were to appear in the Lightning Territory, there wouldn't be any more pact of 3 moves. At that time, he hoped that Mu Chen wouldn't be a disappointment. Lightning Territory 8th level. Behind the Lightning River screen, a light image, along with the roar of a dragon as it flashed out, appeared on the horizon. The light dissipated as Mu Chen couldn't help heavily breathe out a lump of air. His eyes were filled with a grave light. The Lightning River screen was, indeed, powerful and the impact was way too horrifying. However, fortunately, he had the dragon soaring art. Adding the fact that when he was in the Northern Spiritual Academy initially, he received some teachings from Teacher Mo and underwent similar training. Although this Lightning River screen was several folds more fearsome, Mu Chen was able to charge through the Lightning River screen with his speed after having some experience. I wonder how Shen Sangsheng and Li Xiantong made their way here, through speed or force. Mu Chen mumbled to himself. Although Mu Chen's method was a little cheap, speed was also an embodiment of one's strength. Mu Chen shook his head. Thereafter, he raised his head and looked at the 8th level of the Lightning Territory, an area meant for outstanding students in the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy. But prior to Mu Chen's expectations, there wasn't any darkness in the horizon, nor was there any dark thundercloud groups. On the contrary, the sky was clear. The entire space was quiet and peaceful. Mu Chen was a little startled as he looked at the scene before him. Clearly, he never expected the 8th level to be so quiet. Why isn't there any thunderclouds? Mu Chen frowned. He also didn't feel any tyrannical lightning energy in this space. Just what was going on? Fly towards the left for 100 miles. The Nine Netherbirds' solemn voice suddenly resounded from his heart. The Nine Netherbirds' senses were clearly way more powerful than Mu Chen's. And towards the left, it sensed some ripples. Mu Chen nodded as his figure moved, flying towards the direction that was pointed out by the Nine Netherbird. A few minutes later, his figure slowly came to a stop as he looked at the scene before him, and he became dumbfounded. It was a vast plain, and on the plain flowed a huge river. This river wasn't any ordinary river, but a river made from silvery lightning water. Furthermore, the flow of this lightning river did not come in contact with the ground, but was flowing to a certain distance above the ground, floating. It wiggled slowly, with a slow pace as it flowed towards the distance. Its appearance was like a huge silver dragon that was moving about. Hiss! Mu Chen couldn't help inhaling a deep breath of cold air. He never imagined in his wildest imaginations that the 8th level would be so fearsome that the lightning energy had actually condensed and formed a lightning river. In the 7th level, Mu Chen attracted more than 10 thunderclouds before a small lightning river was formed. But from the looks of this lightning river, it was beyond comparison to the one he formed. And clearly, this wasn't the only lightning river in the 8th level. It's indeed worthy of being the 8th level of the lightning territory. Mu Chen sighed. No wonder the requirements were so harsh to enter the 8th level. If one didn't possess the sufficient strength, it would be hard for them to get any results from cultivating here. Let's begin refining the divine lightning beads. Mu Chen spoke in his heart. Clearly, the task of refining the divine lightning beads was up to the Nine Netherbird. Otherwise, with his strength, God knows how long it would take for him to refine the divine lightning beads that were worth over 2 million spiritual value points. Okay, leave it to me, the Nine Netherbird was overjoyed. When Mu Chen was done talking, black flames flew out of his body and formed into a small sparrow made of black flames. The Nine Netherbirds' mouth widened as black flames swept out in surges, forming into a huge tornado that was ablaze with black flames. As the wind was violently whipped up, the flowing lightning river started to stir. Rumble. As the calm lightning river turned violent, the berserking lightning energy was like an electric current as it flowed into the black tornado. The deep roar of thunder sounded out. As the black flames circulated, it rapidly gathered the lightning energy with that astonishing method as beads of the divine lighting beads containing pure lightning energy were made. Mu Chen looked at that spectacular scene before him and couldn't help smacking his lips. He immediately sat down with his legs crossed. From the looks of it, the Nine Netherbird would require some time to refine, and there wasn't that many students that could make their way into the 8th level. Henceforth, he wasn't worried that this scene would be caught by anyone. What he could do next was nothing but wait for the Nine Netherbird to finish. However, some things weren't as simple as Mu Chen had thought. While the Nine Netherbird was refining the divine lightning beads at a large quantity, there were some movements in the depths of the lightning territory. In the depths, there was a dusky space. In the space, there was a huge black-colored lightning river floating in the air as countless black-colored water flowed down. It was like a huge dragon that was flying along with the violent lightning. This fluctuation, it's the Nine Nether Flame? Why is someone from the Nine Netherbirds clan here? In the darkness, it was as though the twittering of birds was sorrowfully sounding out. Rumble. Mu Chen stared at the huge commotion of the lightning river. He couldn't help stretching his body. The Nine Netherbird had already been refining the divine lightning bead for roughly half an hour. But, clearly, the amount of beads that the Nine Netherbird had refined was still insufficient. It seems like it will require a few days of time to get enough divine lightning beads to be worth over 2 million spiritual value points, even if I have the Nine Netherbird doing the task. Mu Chen helplessly shook his head. Thereafter, he decided to close his eyes and cultivate. Just when Mu Chen was about to close his eyes and start cultivating, he suddenly sensed something wrong. Shortly after, he curiously turned his head over. Not too far away, there seemed to be a figure on a huge rock. A human figure. Mu Chen was startled as he immediately stood up and directed his eyes over to that direction. Only then did he clearly see that the figure that was sitting on the rock was a bald old man, donning a tattered black robe. The old man appeared to be as thin as a matchstick with muddy eyes. From his appearance, it seemed as though he would soon step into his coffin. Right at this moment, the bald old man was holding a crutch in his arms as he blankly stared at Mu Chen. Mu Chen felt his scalp tingling from this weird scene. That old man seemed to have been sitting on that spot for a long time. However, Mu Chen didn't sense him at all. Just what strength was required to accomplish such a feat? The Nine Netherbird also sensed something wrong as it immediately withdrew the black flame tornado. Within the tornado, a flow of a silvery current flew over. This was all of the divine lightning beads that the Nine Netherbird had spent half a day's time to bitterly refine. However, just as the Nine Netherbird was about to take those divine lightning beads, the bald old man suddenly made a movement with his hand and all of the beads were instantly separated from the Nine Netherbirds' control, and were spiraling around the latter. Mu Chen and the Nine Netherbirds' eyes changed. The Nine Netherbird inwardly clenched its teeth, but did not take any action as its intuition told it that the weird bald old man before them was extremely frightening. Be cautious, this old man is very formidable. The Nine Netherbirds' voice was extremely grave as its voice resounded within Mu Chen's heart. Mu Chen bitterly smiled. Isn't that obvious? He easily startled them. How could he be simple? This old man, Mu Chen summoned his courage and said with his hands cupped together. The lightning territory is for students to refine their bodies. You made use to the Nine Netherbirds' power to refine the divine lightning beads. This is considered a foul, the bald old man said as he raised his muddy eyes. Mu Chen's face flushed red as he could not explain himself. This method was indeed similar to cheating. The small black sparrow that the Nine Netherbird formed stood on Mu Chen's shoulders. Its eyes flickered with light and on its small body, black flames rose. In that instant, it had made the decision to grab Nai Li and flee the instant it felt something wasn't right. Use a small Nine Nether that had just reached adulthood. Don't try to employ any means before me unless you're one of those old monsters in your Nine Netherbirds clan. The bald old man stared at the Nine Netherbird as he smiled. The Nine Netherbirds' gaze changed. However, you've indeed aroused my curiosity. With the pride of you Nine Netherbirds, you would actually form a bloodline bond with a human, not to mention such a weak human. If this fact was made known to those old monsters in your clan, I'm afraid that you'd suffer, the bald old man said as he took a glance at Mu Chen and the Nine Netherbird. His speech was slow and his voice gave others a feeling of helplessness. However, the words he spoke out made Mu Chen and the Nine Netherbirds' scalps tingle. The old man actually managed to see through the relationship between them with just a glance. Just what frightening eyesight was that? Mu Chen bitterly smiled. Senior, it was our fault in this matter. We will not refine any more divine lightning beads and will make our leave now. Will that do? From the tone of this bald old man, he should be a huge figure of authority in this Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy. Therefore, as students of the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy, Mu Chen wasn't worried that their lives would be in danger. As Mu Chen spoke, he slowly retreated. If the bald old man didn't say anything, then he would leave this place immediately. From the looks of the small Nine Netherbird, its evolution has failed, right? And right now, it needs the Northern Sea Dragon's blood essence and borrow its power to rush into the Divine Beast record, right? You guys are now refining the divine lightning beads without any restraint is to save up enough spiritual value points to purchase it, correct? Just as Mu Chen was about to slowly move back, the bald old man slowly spoke. Mu Chen bitterly smiled. It seemed that there wasn't anything that could be hidden from this old man. Do you want a sufficient amount of divine lightning beads? The bald old man smiled as he looked at Mu Chen with interest. Mu Chen honestly nodded his head. It's hard to encounter such an interesting younger generation fella. The bald old man placed the crutches on his knees and stared at Mu Chen. If you manage to handle an attack from my clone, I will return these divine lightning beads to you and will let you guys refine the sufficient amount of divine lightning beads you both need. Furthermore, I will give this young fella some reward. What do you say? Ha, after all of these years, there were only 2 people that could withstand an attack from this old man's clone among the young fellas in the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy. 2 people? Mu Chen was blank as his gaze concentrated. Was it Shen Sangsheng and Li Xiantong? The bald old man slightly nodded and smiled. Those 2 young fellas do have some talent. However, you've astonished me, being able to get to the 8th level with just quasi-heavenly transformation stage cultivation. What now? Mu Chen slightly went silent. After a brief moment, both of his hands abruptly clenched. His black pupils surged with sharpness. Since Shen Sungsheng and Li Xiantong could accomplish it, then he refused to believe that he could be any worse than them. Okay, it's a deal. This video will end here.